Okay, so this is not a familiar sight. I know usually it is, but I'm here to show y'all something. We're gonna do a little bit of a difference of something I've done before, and that is we're gonna do a comparison video. So I know you see this is my car, that's a friend's car, but what are we comparing? We're comparing this right here. Let me get out the shadows right now. MST Intake. I'm gonna come over to this car, and this is a 6-element intake. Now, you can ask yourself, why are you doing this, CarQuicks? It's not even that necessary. Who asked for this? Well, I had a lot of people in the DMs and messages asking about the differences between these two, and I know somebody that had one, and he's a friend of mine. I said, listen, let's just do a quick video, show people the differences between the two, the materials, the design, the power, maybe what the future is holding, the elephant in the room. You know that if anybody put an intake on a GR Corolla, we know the elephant in the room. That is a check engine light, whatever the code P029C. I might as well just put it on my license plate at this point in time. Everybody talks about it so much. But we're gonna do something where I just talk about the differences and stuff that they have on these cars. So let me just start with, let me just jump to my car, okay? So I have an MST Performance Intake. Mine is an open element one, meaning open element. You see stuff, there's nothing on covering it over. There's some schools of thoughts here. There are people that feel that that's not a good design, that they should have enclosed it, that it's pulling in hot air. I kind of differ from that because I've put temperature sensors in there, and the ambient temperature isn't any much higher, maybe a tad, but we're splitting hairs at that point, right? I'm not gonna say I have the engineering facilities to break this down in the most scientific matter. But what I will say is that I've driven this car in the heat and daily driving it and driving it hard, and you don't get to a point, even when the engine and the oil temps are up into the 220, 230s, a lack of power or maybe heat soak or something that's stopping it. So my experience, CarQuicks, my experience with the MST Performance Intake has been good. I'm not going to say that I haven't heard of others who've had a check engine light or maybe some other issue. Really, it's just a check engine light. I don't know of any other issues. The build quality is what we're going to talk about first, right? So let's just get to the design. And this is, before I start, understand, if you come to this video, first, like and subscribe to your boy. Number two, this is a comparison video. We're going to compare this to the 6-element intake and the differences, what they did different, what maybe design language is and stuff that they tried to, introduce for each one of their, versions of an intake, right? So here, let's start here. MST Performance, bow. So here's the main differences. Mine is an open element. You get this little rubber gasket that goes around the top of this, right? What that does is when you close the hood, it acts as a way to seal around this area to keep cold air that's coming from here onto the air filter itself. Where is this air coming from? If you look down here, there's an opening on GR Corollas that has basically a tube that goes through, air comes through there, and it opens up through here. Now, what MST did not do, that 6-element did, is they did not give you an extra tubing that connected to that port out of the grill and aimed straight into this intake area. They just left it open. And so because it's open, the air will come through here and then just kind of force itself over here. This area is kind of sealed off a bit, so it keeps having the hot air back here off of the intake, off of the air filter. Obviously, this area is still open, so if anybody looks at this, they're going to say, well, you can have hot air kind of travel over here and get into this area. You're not wrong. But for the most part, when you have cold air rushing in from the front and you have the hot air, I mean, you're not going to have a situation where it's just a bunch of hot air just gathering up inside of the intake. It'll keep its way out of there. But continuing on, black material matches very much what is here on the OEM one, from the valve, not the valve cover, from the engine cover to the shroud in the front. And right here, this one is it's like a thin metal. It's not plastic. This is all plastic. This is a little bit of a thin metal. Kind of sounds plastic, but it's not. And then you can also see here on the tubing, that is crinkle black as well, as they say. And that follows all the way to the back where they have another tube that goes. Now, the tube in the back, it doesn't go all the way down to the turbo. That would be a turbo inlet pipe. And there are some companies that are making stuff like this. This one stops, and you may be able to see what I'm talking about, but it stops somewhere like around here. If you watched my video on me installing this intake, I talked about where it goes, right? So really, you come from here, here, and see where my finger stops. That's pretty much where it stops, and then the OEM one into the turbo is what continues, and then you have this entire intake that goes all the way to the front. That is how MST designed theirs. Now, from you pull back, like I talked about in my video when I installed this, I at first was against how this looked on paper. Then I put on the car and I saw it and I said, I'm not opposed to how this looks. I do like this. This kind of gives me those older, early on 90s, early 2000 import, tuner modification vibes, open element on there. And plenty of people run cars nowadays with an open element like that for the air filter without any issues. So that's how MST runs their design and how they have done theirs. Another benefit too is because it keeps all this stuff OEM and matches up to it, the look of it looks very much like you changed something, you modified it, but it isn't like a polarizing issue or a polarizing look to what it had before. Now, we're moving on. We're going on to something else. So, this is 6 Element. Immediately you notice some differences. I'm not gonna say that when you look at this, you probably look at this and see a more complete kit. Let me run back real quick. Hold on. Work with me here. What you see right here is a more simple air intake. I will definitely say that. Less ideas to the OEM plus side of things. This is just strictly quick and dirty, as I say. Give me an intake, put it on, give me the shroud around it, let's get going. What 6 Element did here that I will praise them on is that they made this match very, very close to OEM with that extra step. That extra step is called OEM Plus for all you kids out there. I'm not saying that's a true definition. I'm just saying that that's what I'm going to run off that as a story. So OEM Plus is what I tend to think of when I see 6 Elements intake. It is, let's say OEM Plus, right? Because it's a step above and you still have to take off all the factory stuff. So it's not OEM to that degree, but regardless, you get what I'm saying. Now let's talk about their materials. 6 Elements uses a plastic entire encasing where they put the air filter in, and if you notice, it matches extremely close to the factory engine cover, to the shroud, to the same plastic that you see here, to the tubing here, all the way. Now they use a plastic all the way across, basically the same injected, probably molded plastic, where MST, their piping, even though the shroud, I did say it was metal. I could be a little bit wrong because it feels very thin, so it could be a plastic, but I'll say with the metal, as I said before. But for a fact, the tubing is metal on there. 6 Element use a plastic tubing. Now, that doesn't mean that MST's is made at a higher quality. I think it just depends on the access to whatever materials you got. For instance, the factory intake is all plastic and rubber, okay? So if anybody's out there saying, I need metal, I want it to be high quality, just know that from Toyota, the factory intake is plastic and rubber. From the turbo to the air filter, okay? Just remember that. So, here's what 6 Element did. Remember on the MST one, I said that there was an opening here, as you can see it right here, that came from the factory one. So, I'm gonna throw a picture up on this video that shows you the factory intake, and that opening there has a little snorkel tube that comes out and connects to the OEM air box. So all these intakes, 6 Element, MST, they take that away. But what they did here is that they introduced a tube that connects all the way to the front back into this grill here that gives you basically a full chamber tunnel of cold air straight to the air filter. I like that idea. I like that design a lot, actually. Very clean, very OEM. Now, their intake, though, there's some differences. For one, their intake comes from here, goes all the way to the box, air filter, and it stops right there. What 6 Element did not include, or they don't include on their standard intake, is replacing the tube that's in the back of the OEM GR Corolla engine. That tube that I've taken off of mine is like I want to say it's like a baffle. Everybody, actually, you know what? I got it on me. Hold on. Everybody hold their thoughts right here. I might cut this video to show you what I'm talking about because I got it on me. So I'm gonna go grab it and we're gonna show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I got the OEM intake on me. So I'm grabbing some stuff. Hold on, so that we can all have a real conversation about what I'm talking about. So that if anybody asks you, hey, what is it that they took off, and what is it that you need when you do these intakes? I'm gonna show you the whole thing right now. Don't say I never did nothing for you. All right, so I'm gonna grab this stuff and we're gonna go ahead and talk. We're gonna talk about what we're doing, okay? So I'm gonna leave that open because I ain't gonna close it right now. But rock with me here, okay? All right, I'm putting pieces on the ground. All right, okay. Okay, all right. Back. So, 6 Element. Remember I said on the back of their intake, it ends right here, and the piece that MST removes, 6 Element did not give you that piece. That piece I'm talking about is this right here. This is the OEM intake tubing that's on the back of the engine that you see. If you look inside of it, fairly open. The only difference is this little chamber right there. That chamber where air goes into is like a muffler, so to speak, right? It takes the air and quiets it down a bit. That is what's in there. So all that MST did is they replaced this tube. For MST, it was this guy right here. They replaced this tube that's in the back of the engine with a unit that looks like a straight pipe, just like the front one, without the mass airflow sensor. So the air flows even faster all the way to the point of the turbo inlet. So this is the piece that comes off. 6 Element keeps this piece on, and you connect their new intake to this piece at the end right here. So the other difference is this snorkel. So I want to explain this because I talked about it and you may not understand it if you haven't had a GR Corolla or you haven't actually taken off an intake. This is the OEM intake snorkel that sits right here, right? Now one could argue I can keep mine on there and it just be jamming air somewhere in there. And I thought about it, but I didn't do it. But this is what came off, right? And this is what 6 Element introduced. See, normally you have the OEM box and you stick it there and then this is sitting on there. And that's what enters into the air from the front bumper right here. So this piece comes off and you replace it. You don't replace it with anything, you just take it off and put it to the side, right? And that's what is used on most of these intakes. That's what's on there from the OEM one. So 6 Element takes this piece off, give you this intake, ended at the OEM one that I showed you, and they include this top cover that's clear. There's also another one that looks like forged carbon that they have that you can put on the cover if you don't want a clear one. I do like the clear one. It adds a certain element of just something cool. I saw a gentleman put some LED lights inside of there, so you gives it like a cool, funky look when you open the hood. You get their emblem right here. Everything connects. They even give you a provision for where that OEM air flap valve goes, so that you can kind of bolt it there and keep the vacuum hoses that you're not using directly on here. MST, they don't give you that provision. So when you take off that solenoid for the OEM intakes flap that opens at certain acceleration points or vacuum points that the computer tells it to do, you just have to kind of stick it off to the side. So what I had to do is zip tie it down here and keep it off to the side, kind of clean with the other wires there. 6 Element did something good by giving you a provision for that. So this is well thought out. I will give them that. They thought this out from a standpoint of a person brand new to this car, putting on an intake, following the instructions, doing it, you know, step by step, and having a very OEM looking thing that's aftermarket. So that's how they set theirs up. Now, performance. I don't have a dyno, clearly. I'm in the middle of a parking lot, so there ain't no dynos here. I've done the butt dyno and I'm looking at sheets of paper. The dyno or the power gains on any one of these intakes sans a tune is somewhere between 15 and 18 horsepower. I've driven my car enough from an OEM to an MST Performance one to realize that there is something more there. I don't know the exact number. I'm only going off what they say they have gotten from their own dyno and stuffs. So MST and 6 Element, from a performance standpoint, they're neck and neck. Neither are performing at a much higher point. It's not showing 6 Element because theirs is enclosed, it gets 20 to 30 horsepower more, and because MST's is open, it only gets 15 to 18. They're pretty much dead even when it comes to that. Now, the other difference between the two is going to be the sound. And this is where the MST is going to edge out what 6 Element does when it comes to their intake system that you can buy from them. Because MST included that pipe that I showed you that removes that whole rear section behind the engine, and that is the piping that goes from here all the way to the back, and you can kind of see there to the turbo inlet that goes down to the turbo. It sounds crazy, okay? Turbo intake noises, flutter, blow off valve is loud enough that I question why you would need an aftermarket when it just sounds that good. And because it takes away this like baffle chamber that I was talking about, because that's taken away, the air and the sound is much louder. It's loud enough to the point where you might think something is wrong. Because when I first did it, I was like, did I not, put something on correctly? 6 Element though, they do get a lot more intake noise and sound because of the tubing that is there. That's not OEM, but it is a tad quieter. So because it is quieter for the lack of having the OEM tube removed that has the air chamber baffles in there, you don't get the same amount of volume and intake and turbo noises that I get on the MST on the 6 Element one. But that's not a bad thing. A lot of it just depends on what you want to do, whatever your options are. Do you like that amount of sound? Do you not? But I have something else to add to this little comparison video before I wrap this up. I am going to do a sound one too, so don't think I won't. And again, if you want to hear that part, like and subscribe. Tell me what else you want to know about these intakes in the comments if you have something else you want to know. But here's the other thing. 6 Element has something coming, right? They're not done. In the coming near future, 6 Element is making a complete inlet turbo pipe that goes from where their intake ends all the way down into the turbo. And I'm gonna throw it up on the screen right here so you can see what it looks like in basically the description of what I said and what they're engineering to put on there. Now that's a big deal because that's even better than what MST did. See, MST gave me a pipe from the OEM one, but it stops at the turbo, the point where the separate pipe on the OEM turbo and everything comes up to the point of that chambered pipe that goes to the intake. They stop there. Now, when you introduce one from the turbo all the way back to the intake, that is going to increase efficiency, throttle response, flow. It's definitely adding some power. So when that comes out from 6 Element, you will see that number jump. If they gave you the complete kit, if they gave you the intake plus their turbo inlet pipe, you would have something that performs at a higher point. That 15, 18 horsepower I talked about with just intake, alone, would have to jump into the 30, maybe even 40. At that point, you probably want to run a tune because of how good and how efficient the air is flowing and is moving. But that is something that 6 Element has coming up very soon. Now, here's another benefit too. Like I said, if you are a person that prefers it to look as close to OEM as possible, as opposed to on my car, where it's very open and very kind of race car-ish or very much aftermarket. Like when you open the hood, you're going to be like, that's aftermarket. You open the hood here, you'll know it's aftermarket if you're used to seeing these cars, but you'll also realize that it's a thought out design. It's more thought out than what MST has done. And that's not a knock to MST. Everybody's business model and what they're going to do is going to be different, but it's just stating the facts. 6 Element, their intake is a more thought out design for the fact that it wanted to integrate into how the engine looked. If you look at the plastic they used, if you look at the plastic on the engine cover, if you look at where they put their emblem, You know, that's marketing. Some people didn't like them putting their name on their products, which is hilarious because those same people probably are rocking Levi's with their name on it somewhere. So regardless, I think it does look cool. They have a cover coming out that is completely like forged or black. I do wish, if there is something that 6 Element wants to take from my video, is offer a cover that's the same material, or enclose, make an option where there is no outside cover. Just close this whole thing off, put that same emblem just dead on top, and then the whole thing is a black encasing, and it doesn't look as fancy. That would look very, very much OEM, and you probably wouldn't tell, but I think it would work well, especially for states like California, where they're, you know, battling all types of foolishness when it comes to modifying a car. Hey, listen, if you can do that where you enclose it, stick the GR logo on top of it, and they open the hood, it will look like it's dead on OEM, that nothing got changed. So I think that's a cool idea. So if you're listening, take that idea. Take this whole intake box that you have and close this entire thing. Either put your logo on the top of there or take the GR one. Or I'm gonna show you the OEM one. See how there's the GR Toyota Yaris? That's the top air box on top of the air box of the OEM one. Copy that idea. Throw that on there, and folks will think that they have an OEM intake. And that's it for the comparison. Now I'm gonna do a sound one, and I'm gonna show you from the front. Just so if anybody's asking, that is a circuit edition, that is a core edition. Same engine, same drivetrain. The difference is here is gonna be obviously the hood. You already know. I'm not about to explain the difference between a core and a circuit. If you're looking at GR Corollas and don't know that by now, listen, just follow, go to my old videos. I talked about it all. Now we're gonna do a sound check. I'll be back. All right, we got a little bit of a change up here. So if you remember, I showed you that intake from MST, and I showed you from 6 Element. Okay, so this is MST. This is 6 Element over here, and we added a blue GR Corolla to the equation there. Another friend of ours popped up. So this is the OEM intake. So all the cars are running, but remember I talked to you about the snorkel here, this part that goes up, this one that goes. This is the OEM setup. That is what it looks like from the factory. So the things that we changed, the things that I changed, was this main box here in the front. So you got this main box there that goes all the way to the back. That is on the 6 Element. And then for me, I ran the open element version, but I have a pipe that goes all the way to the back towards where the turbo inlet part goes. So if you wanted to know the main differences, that is the differences between them, from the OEM to the MST one. Don't say I never showed you anything. Now I'm gonna do a sound thing on this in a second. I'm gonna have a friend of mine come rev these engines so you can kind of hear what the difference is on each one. But there is the difference between OEM, 6 Element, MST, GR Corollas. I might have to get a screen grab of this because y'all gonna ask me for an intake shootout, and this is what it's gonna be. So we're gonna run that. All right, so we're doing a quick little sound test. All the cars are running. You probably hear them in the background, but we're gonna show how the intake sounds on the stock one to the 6 Element to the MST one. So here goes the OEM one. This is how it sounds when you rev it. While you wait, this is the most GR Corollas we probably had in one video at one time. Usually it's just mine or my friend Chris, but we added an extra one to the equation to make it a little bit more spicy. Oh, here we go. So that was an OEM one. She can cut it off too if she wants. That was the OEM on the GR Corolla Circuit Edition Blue Flame, in case you think the colors make a difference on how the intake sounds. All right, 6 Element. Now, mind you, his car has a mid-pipe from 2J Racing and the 2J Racing exhaust. So you heard a lot more extra sounds on that one, but you get a bit of how the 6 Element, hear more of the turbo, the blow-off valve, real nice. Now, This is on the MST one. I have a stock exhaust, mid-pipe, exhaust, all stock, just the intake. Now see, that open element part I told you about that keeps like more of the air going through, the stuff you can hear, the blow off out, the flood, I told you, all of it sounds pretty nuts. So that's on an MST intake. That's the open element 6, OEM one down there. That's how they sound. All right, we're back. So the other car left. But we're wrapping this up now. So the last thing to talk about in comparison to these intakes, am I straight? Oh my goodness, I'm reckless. Now, I showed you the MST 6 element, yada, yada, yada. Here's the elephant in the room I talked about when I first started this video. There is the issue with the check engine light. Now, MST has a fix on theirs that's worked on my car. Now, the fix is this little coupler here. There's like a vacuum hose that comes out, goes to the PCV valve connector. That's what mine uses. 6 element has one too. Theirs is an entire tubing that goes under the engine cover here. Same for the PCV. That helps with the check engine light that's coming on. So every company has come up with a fix for this check engine light, which is really dealing with the vacuum and the solenoid from the OEM air box and the air flap. And listen, I'm not no master or engineer at this, but I have some theories. Everybody's fix has had some people say it didn't work for them. I haven't had an issue with the check engine light. My friend over here, he's had a few. Actually, hold on, let me take that back. I did get one, but mine was in some weird parameter. I was very cold outside. I was holding 4th gear, and then it happened, and I never saw it again. It's been another 3,000 miles, and I've been trying to get it to do it, but I have not seen it. Now, everybody else that has an issue with the check engine light has seen it constantly. Whenever they start the car, they further drive away, it's immediate. So take that with some optimism, right? I don't think it's a overarching issue, so to speak, but I also am not going to say that it's not something to understand if you're buying one of these intakes, because you should. I'm not going to say everything is going to be perfect for every single person. My experience has been fine. I haven't had any issues. The car hasn't bogged down. It's been driving fine. And so take with that what you will. But before you go, remember, if you like this video, like it, subscribe to the channel. I'll be back with another one. Podcast episode's up. I got another one coming soon, but so on and so forth. You know, time goes on. Do as you wish, do as you may. I'll see y'all around. Peace.